Good afternoon, and welcome to the League of Women Voters of Greater Hartford and WHC-TV candidate debate for the Connecticut 1st Congressional District. We are very pleased to be able to bring you this nonpartisan voter service, and we thank the campaigns for their cooperation. I am Carol Mulready, President of the League of Women Voters of Greater Hartford, and I will serve as the moderator of this debate for the 1st Congressional District. WHC-TV and the League of Women Voters of Greater Hartford are very pleased to be able to bring you this nonpartisan voter service for the 1st Congressional District. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization which works to encourage informed and active participation in government. And we hope that this will serve as one piece of information for our listening audience that assists in preparing for voting. The debate will be conducted in a modified cumulative time format. This format is designed to enable candidates to freely elaborate on their approaches to a variety of issues, unimpeded by the strict time constraints of more traditional debate formats. Each candidate will have approximately 10 minutes of response time during the debate. When speaking, each candidate is timed by his own League of Women Voters timekeeper. Periodically, the timekeepers will show signs indicating the amount of time remaining for each candidate. After each candidate has had a chance to respond to a question that is posed, candidates are encouraged to rebut, responding to the differences they perceive amongst themselves, understanding that the clock is running. Each candidate will have a separate 2 minutes for a closing statement. The order of precedence was determined by lottery. It is my pleasure to introduce the candidates to you. They have committed their time and energies to this important aspect of the democratic process, running for elective office, and they will be introduced according to their position on the ballot. First, John Henry Decker is a Republican certified financial planner who works with small businesses, corporations, families, and individuals, advising them on fiscal matters and for business entities of their fiduciary responsibilities. He is currently on leave to run for the 1st Congressional District. Mr. Decker also immerses himself in the community, being involved with numerous organizations, including the Asylum Hill Congregational Church, where he is a deacon, and he serves on several boards, including the Mandel Center, the Jewish Community Center. He's on the board of directors of Business for Downtown Hartford, an advocacy group for downtown Hartford, and he works across party lines to promote and develop business and commerce in downtown. He is also part of Leadership Greater Hartford, that works to integrate community leaders with nonprofit organizations across the Greater Hartford area. He lives in West Hartford with his wife and 3 children. In his free time, he loves coaching youth sports. Next, we have Representative John Larson, who is the incumbent Democrat. Mr. Larson has served the 1st Congressional District since 1999. A lifelong resident of East Hartford, Representative Larson graduated from East Hartford High School in 1967 and Central Connecticut University in 1971. He was a senior fellow at the Yale Bush Center. While working as a teacher at East Hartford High School, Representative Larson began his career in public service by serving on the East Hartford Board of Education, then the Town Council, and eventually State Senate President. He still lives in East Hartford with his wife, Leslie, and their 3 children. Next, our Green Party candidate, Mike Derosa, is presently residing in Wethersfield, Connecticut with his wife, Barbara Berry. Mike graduated from the University of Connecticut with a bachelor's in history. He served in the Domestic Peace Corps, known as VISTA, for 2 years in New Jersey. He has postgraduate education from Southern Connecticut State University in education, and he taught school for 3 years in New Haven. He was head of counseling at Opportunities Industrial Center, a job training center in New Haven. For 15 years, he's been a telecommunication consultant and computer consultant for retail businesses. In his volunteer capacities, he is founder of the nonpartisan citizen organization Voter, which is voter opportunity through election reform, which helped to play a role in passing the voter verifiable paper trail that we have in our electronic machines. He is part of a third-party lawsuit. He is a litigant in a third-party and independence candidates' equal and fair treatment under the recently passed Connecticut campaign finance law. He also has, for 25 years, had a radio show called New Focus, which is for one place at the University of Hartford. It comes out of the University of Hartford. Okay. And our last candidate is a petitioning candidate, Mathew McKinnon Corey, graduated Manchester High School in 1982 and enlisted out of high school into the U.S. Navy. He was deployed to Grenada and Beirut in 1983 and served in the Navy until 1987. He worked for the U.S. Post Office then for a while, and then shortly afterward as a truck driver for the Teamsters. He opened a high-rise window cleaning company in 1990 called Advanced Services International. In 2002, Mathew opened McKinnon's Irish Pub, located in downtown Hartford. Mathew is proud to say he is a product of hard work. He comes from a family of 7. His dad was a World War II veteran who worked at the post office and as a courier at night. And his father often said, if you don't respect the value of a dollar until you work, you don't respect the value of a dollar until you work for it. Mathew always has lived his life knowing the value of hard work. Thank you all for being with us, and we will get right to the questions. And as previously stated, we have chosen the order of our questions, and the first question goes to Mr. Corey. Gridlock is commonly used to describe the state of Congress. If elected, how do you think we can get Congress to find common areas of agreement to address the critical issues facing our nation now and into the future? Explain what your role will be to solve the problem.
I want to thank the League of Women Voters for inviting me down here. I want to thank all the candidates for inviting me down here. I'm an independent candidate. I don't answer to a party. I would answer to the people. And the sad thing is that there's wonderful ideas on the left and there's wonderful ideas on the right. The sad part about it is that there's so much partisan politics down there that they're polarized. If somebody came out and had a great idea on the left side, they would be polarized if they're not following party line or party order. And it's a sad state because when they go down to Washington, they should work for the people. There's great ideas, once again, on both sides of the aisle, and it's sad that they can't get anything done. And I feel the frustration as much as any other American in this office here in this country. So I hear that. As an independent, I would be a loud voice down there. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Larson. Mr. Larson.
Thank you. Let me also thank the League and also thank my colleagues here for joining us in this debate. And that's a very important question to lead with. How do you break the gridlock in Washington? Something that, as Mathew pointed out, is very frustrating for the people of this country. What I've done is reach across the aisle and roll up my sleeves and make sure that we're able to get legislation passed. Let me give you just 2 examples because of our time constraints. One, passing the Joint Strike Fighter and preserving more than 8,300 jobs in the state and adding for 1,000 more. We worked across the aisle to make sure that we had the bipartisan support in order to pass the most fundamental thing that everybody in this country wants. That's a job. Securing those manufacturing jobs and other defense-related jobs is something that I have taken seriously as a candidate. I'm proud to work across the aisle and have a reputation of doing so. Another one I'll give an example of is working with autistic children. And whether it's national defense or whether it's our children, there's ways to reach out across the aisle and work to make sure that you pass these programs. I think that infrastructure programs with respect to roads, bridges, And rail and school systems, they're not Democrat or Republican. They're things that all Americans need and what we have to commit ourselves to passing in Congress. I have a reputation and a record of doing both. I hope to continue that in the next session of Congress.
Thank you. Mr. Derosa.
Thanks again for giving me an opportunity to be here and speak out. I think that the role of a congressman is to be the watchdog of democracy, not the lapdog of corporations or the lapdog of special interests. And as your congressman, what I will try to do is to overcome the politics of fear and replace them with the politics of real change. And if you go out to my website, MikeDerosa.org, you can download a copy. It's a summary of the Green New Deal. The Green New Deal is the only document that I have read this year that addresses the real problems facing America. And if I might take a few seconds to just mention a couple of these things, what we're really talking about is a full employment green jobs program that will create 25 million jobs by implementing a nationally funded but locally controlled direct employment initiative. Over 25% of the mortgages in Connecticut are underwater and 10% are in foreclosure. As your congressman, I will submit a bill to allow foreclosure judges the power to allow people to stay in their homes and require banks to accept a rent-to-buy agreement for 5 years. And the Green Deal is really also about creating massive conservation, solar, wind, geothermal, and small hydro, and a clean transportation and Medicare for all. What we're really talking about is we have to go beyond military Keynesianism. We have to go beyond monetarism. We have to go beyond the system, the economic systems that have failed us. And we must now create new systems. And I would recommend that we go back to Franklin Delano Roosevelt's famous speech of Saturday, March 4th, 1933, where he said, "So first of all, let me assert my firm belief that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself." Those words mean more to me today than I think they meant when I first read them in school in the late 40s and early 50s. And I think we have to learn that the politics of fear must be replaced by the politics of real change.
Mr. Decker.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, everyone. And Carol, thank you, the League of Women Voters, everyone for being here and putting this together. It's an honor to speak in front of you. I would tell you, as far as the gridlock, this is one of the reasons I'm running. I heard it in Matt's answer. I probably heard it in your frustrations out there and people watching. People are fed up with the gridlock and the partisanship in Washington. I've heard it a lot over this campaign already, the blaming the Republicans, blaming this. I've never been in elected office. I'm not part of that. I'm from the community. I've worked on boards and various organizations. We've always come together to solve a goal. When you have a problem or a goal, you come together and find a way to solve it. That's what needs to be done in Washington. That is what's not done in Washington. One of my concerns is, our current representative, he's a chairman of the Democratic caucus. He has to speak for the Democratic caucus now. And I just wonder, if he can continue to be bipartisan, as he says, coming together for defense or autism, those are the easy issues. But we've got tough and difficult choices in front of us, and we're going to have to make tough choices. But I think sending someone that's not poisoned by the politics of Washington, someone with a fresh understanding and appreciation for the honor to serve Congress and the enthusiasm to get on there and try to get things done. We're all in this together. But Congress has a 90% disapproval rating for a reason, because they don't work together. And we've got to change that. We have a unique opportunity to stand up to the partisan in politics by sending a different person there to represent us. Thank you.
Any further from anyone?
Well, I think I have to respond to that by saying, first and foremost, as I said in my opening remarks, I've had a history from the time I served on the Board of Education through the State Senate and in Congress of working across the aisle to get things done. And I've got a record that supports it in more than 87 bills, and 2 that are not insignificant and not easy to pass, but autism an important issue, and certainly the defense of the nation and also our manufacturing base. Securing that requires that you work across the aisle, requires that you develop a network of friendships, and also the trust and confidence of giving your word and getting the job done. I'll continue to do that in Washington, D.C., and whether it's campaign finance reform, whether it's national defense, or whether it is autism, I will work with the other side to continue to work. Compromise is not a bad term. Unfortunately, we have an element in Congress that has hijacked the Republican Party and is at war with its own government. That is at the heart of what are the problems that we face in Washington. I will continue to work and fight through that frustration to get things done on behalf of this district.
I do have something to say to that.
Corey.
The manufacturing base, for a fact, in the state of Connecticut has lost an average of 10,000 jobs since Congressman took office a year. So that's 100,000 manufacturing jobs left the state of Connecticut. It's not about gridlock down there. It's about bad laws. It's about overregulation, high taxes, and a bad energy policy. And the congressman talks about defense projects. There's not one candidate up here, well, maybe there might be, but I can't speak for them, that would not fight for Pratt & Whitney. So with that being said, to take the credit for the wonderful people that work over at Pratt & Whitney, the engineers, the machinists, the assemblers, the wonderful staff over there, to put out a nice product and take credit for that. Pratt & Whitney won that contract because they do have the best engines in the world. And if you're going to stick up for that one company, why not we stick up for that fine company here in West Hartford called Colt Firearms? Those arms and those guns that they're making are protecting our soldiers across the sea, protecting our law enforcement officers right here in this country, and protecting law-abiding citizens. So if you're going to stick up for one company, you need to represent and embody the entire district.
Mr. Decker.
I would agree. I would agree exactly what Matt said, but I'd also say, I mean, listen to the congressman's response. You know, I talk about not being poisoned by politics. The first thing he does, he says there's a war with the Republicans in government. How is that being bipartisan right there? He's already declared it here. This is the frustration that I have with our politicians. They say one thing, and the second later, 10 seconds later, he's already critiquing something I'm not even a part of. I've never been in elected office. I've served the community in many, many different organizations. I'm proud to have this opportunity. But you can't put people, all of us, already in that group already.
Mr. Derosa.
I believe that the answer to our problems is not to have Keynesian militarism. The answer to our problems is converting our military industries into industries that are for peace. We could convert Pratt & Whitney to a number of different things, and instead of the military-industrial congressional complex that Eisenhower warned us about in his farewell address, and he was part of that, and they took the word Congressional out of the speech because they thought it was too controversial. But the fact is that we have in each congressional district across the nation a plant, a base, and in many cases, this is the least amount of bang for your buck that you're going to get. If you spend $1 billion on military material, what you end up with is around $8,800. If you spend the same $1 billion on education, transportation, or anything else that is actually productive to our economy, you produce between 20 and 28,000 jobs. And our Green New Deal is the answer to many of these problems. Obviously, it's an idea, but I would recommend that you go out to the website, MikeDerosa.org, or to our national website, just put Green Party into Google, and you can find the alternatives that are missing in action. We have to move in a new direction in this country. If we do not, we will not only create a Great Depression in 2014, we will be in a situation that has been unheard of in our history. We need to move forward and leave the politics of fear behind and embrace the politics of real change.
Okay, thank you. A couple of you have mentioned jobs and jobs creation, and I'm going to give this question to Mr. Larson just to continue with that discussion. This is a time of high unemployment, and we need, according to many commentators, specific steps to change what is happening out there. What would you recommend to create jobs and promote economic growth?
First and foremost, to make it in America, and to make sure you're supporting all of those fine people at Pratt & Whitney and all across this district, and whether it's Pratt & Whitney or whether it's Colts or whether it's Command or whether it's a multitude of all the small manufacturers in this area. That's what I've done as a member of Congress. It's not only to help create those and get those government contracts, but it's also to make sure that we have the education system in place, that we have the training in place. And I stand on my record and happy to say that you can talk to somebody in management or you can talk to somebody in labor. And I just add to John that I said sometimes in the process of government, I'll always reach across the aisle. But I will never fail to point out obstructionists when I see that, because I think that that's wrong and there's a fundamental responsibility to do that. Having said that, you have to fight through that frustration and do that. We've laid out a plan for jobs in this country. The president introduced a whole jobs bill that I'm proud to be the lead sponsor of, that creates jobs in manufacturing and teaching and investment in our infrastructure. That's how we're going to bring this economy around, by reinvesting in America. And whether it's roads, bridges, sewer systems, or our public schools, they're neither Democrat or Republican. These are all infrastructure programs that demand our attention. We've been blocked by that. This Republican Congress, and I dare say, has obstructed on that basis, not even offering the President of the United States the opportunity to bring up his own rule. That's wrong. And when you would rather see Obama fail than the nation succeed, yes, I'm going to stand up for that. In spite of all that, I've had a successful record of reaching across the aisle to work with my colleagues to get the job done here in Connecticut, and will continue to do so. Manufacturing. For every job in manufacturing, it creates 4 jobs in the service sector. That's where our emphasis will remain. Make it in America, and every American will make it.
Mr. Derosa.
I believe that the future of the United States is not in creating new wars. George Orwell once said that the purpose of war is not necessarily victory or defeat. The purpose of war is that it be continuous. And the second purpose of war is to create as much poverty as possible, first in the house of your enemy, but then in your own house. And the third purpose of war is the most insidious of all. It's the destruction of our language. And we see this now in such words as overseas contingency operation, which replaces George Bush's global war on terror, collateral damage, friendly fire. What's so friendly about friendly? And lately, the matrix, disposition matrix, which is a term that is now being used in Washington. It's sort of killing without due process. We have in our midst today the opportunity to either have the politics of managing success and development or managing austerity. And both the Republican and Democratic parties have decided to manage austerity. And I believe that you have the power as voters to change this. And I implore you to do so, to vote for alternatives, whether it's me or other alternative parties, because new ideas are essential to the political process.
Thank you. Mr. Decker.
Yes, I mean, jobs are by far the most important thing. Jobs are by far the most important thing we have to be considered with. And when you look at the unacceptable 7.8% unemployment rate in this country, we have to change that. And that's the stated rate. That does not include those individuals that have given up or dropped out of the labor participation rate. Otherwise, it'd be much higher. Our state's 8.9. In Hartford, the unemployment rate is 17.8. The closer we get to our current representative, the more we get in this district, the higher it gets. What are we doing for Hartford right now? What are we doing for the communities in this district? We have to stand up. You know, again, this is the partisanship I'm here. Here are the solutions, what we have to do. We have to look at our government. We need to drop the corporate tax code. The tax rate. We had the highest corporate tax rate in the nation. Japan was the second highest earlier this year. They dropped their rate. We're now the highest in the world. Companies here in the United States have over $2 trillion overseas right now. Let them repatriate it back. There was a special bill passed in 2004 that let companies that had overseas profits that were already taxed at that individual country level bring the money back into America at a significantly reduced rate for a limited window. That money, if we don't bring it back right now, we'll find a way to get invested overseas, keeping those jobs indefinitely over there. We need to get that money and get that money back here so companies can reinvest in themselves. We've got to reform the tax code. Our tax code is so burdensome and cumbersome. It's riddled with lobbyist influence. We've got to stop that. We've got to get rid of the loopholes. Make it fair for everyone, not carve-outs or things picked by cronyism. We've got to end the regulations. Today, if anyone watched the opening bell on CNBC, it was overwhelmingly filled with CEOs that rang the opening bell that said, end the fiscal cliff, end the uncertainty that's coming out of Congress in Washington right now. They are pleading with our government to get something done so they can grow and hire people, but nothing gets done. Nothing gets done. Last summer, William Daley, the chief of staff, said he went to his cabinet members and said, stop the excessive regulations. You're halting back this economy. We've got to get government out of the way. We've got to stop the excessive and unnecessary regulations. And finally, we got to address the fiscal cliff. The fiscal cliff, as taken out in a full-page article today in the Wall Street Journal, talked again about the same CEOs so fed up and so frustrated because nothing gets done in Washington. But you know what Washington will do? We've known about this fiscal cliff for over a year. It was created because of the failures of the super committee, which he actually proposed a year ago.
No, I did not.
They failed. When Congress could not come together and raise the debt ceiling, Representative John Larson proposed a super committee. It was to bring people together to try to cut $1 trillion over 10 years. We add $1.3 trillion a year to our deficit, and they can't even agree on cutting $1 trillion in 10 years. We can do better. We must do better. These CEOs said end the uncertainties of the fiscal cliff, and we have to do this. They're not hiring. They're frozen. They don't know what to expect. That's why GDP growth rate is down to an unacceptable 1.3%. We are almost at stall speed. We can't accept that because if we don't, our debts will continue to grow and get out of control. People are not going to find jobs. We have to address these things.
Mr. Corey.
Thank you. Made in America. When's the last time we heard that? That's a wonderful statement. But we do have the highest corporate tax rate in the country, 35 to 40%. Canada just lowered its tax rate to 15% to be competitive. We are in a global market. We need to do something about that. Also, the overregulation. Congressman here talks about there's a war on government and they want to see the president fail. Nobody wants to see the president fail. If the president is going to do something good for the country, we want to see him succeed. But when he comes out with a statement, and Congressman Larson backs this bill, a carbon tax credit bill, has a war on energy, clean coal, saying you can open up a clean coal energy plant, but you will go bankrupt. That's a war on business. That's a war on energy. Look at the energy here in the state of Connecticut itself. The CEO of Pratt & Whitney is coming out and telling you you need to do something with your energy policy. And of course, the debt and the uncertainty in this country, people are not going to hire. They're not sure what government's going to do. They need true leadership down there. They need somebody to lead the way, make business certainty, and that's what's lacking in Washington.
Okay, thank you. Next question goes to Mr.
Is there a chance to rebut some of the...
Oh, there is. I'm sorry. I didn't see a hand. I'm sorry.
Let me just say, with respect to energy, I am the lead proponent of the Natural Gas Act in the United States Congress. I brought people to the state of Connecticut, starting with Boone Pickens, more than 3 years ago, to talk about the need for both of us to have an all-of-the-above policy, but also to do it in a sensible way and tap into our resources. Since I was in the Connecticut Senate, I started talking about fuel cell technology, which we have to continue to expand and grow, and ultimately embrace hydrogen, the most abundant element. With regard to respect to a couple of things that John said, with regard to repatriation, it would be a good idea to bring that money home. First of all, we should make sure that we have tax codes that incentivize companies to stay here and create manufacturing here. That's what our proposal and the President's proposal does, to make sure that we have jobs that are created here, and in fact lowers the tax code to 28% and 25% for those that invest in manufacturing. But repatriation can't take place if when the money comes home, that all the money goes to dividends and to the CEOs and none into job creation. It's about job creation. It's about a need to invest in America's people, America's infrastructure, America's manufacturing.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Decker.
First off, earlier this year in January, he voted against the XL Keystone Pipeline. That was energy and oil coming direct from our friendly neighbor up north in Canada. That would have helped energy prices right here in Connecticut and companies across our country. Secondly, actually, I'll save my time. Never mind.
Okay. Since you have begun to address the issue of natural resources and energy, let me ask you about an area that is of great interest to the League of Women Voters. They've studied it and so on. What is the federal government's role in addressing climate change? And that question goes first to Mr. Derosa.
Well, climate change is real, and even if you don't believe it's real, the fact of the matter is that global warming is evident. You don't have to be a weatherman to know that the temperature is rising. We had the highest temperature rises in the last 6 months in 2012 in the history of our country. And I just want to say that it is amazing to me the disinformation that's out here about our energy policy and how people equate regulation with evil. Regulation is not evil when it stops the banks from collapsing, as they did in 2007 and 2008. Regulation wasn't evil when we separated in 1933 with the Glass-Steagall Act. We separated commercial banks from speculative investment banks. And I'd like to know what the Congressman Larson, what the other folks would vote, if they would vote for a reestablishment of Glass-Steagall. It was Bill Clinton on July 10th, 1999, who eliminated it. So to say that regulation is inherently evil is, saying, money is inherently evil. No, money isn't inherently evil. Money is used in different ways. Now, as far as our policy is concerned, let me make the case that right now, solar cells, there's a glut of them across the country. You could put up an array, a large array, and get solar cells at 50 cents to $1 a watt. And they're just sitting there ready to go. Why aren't we pursuing an alternative energy policy? It is because we have vested interests and politicians who believe their own lies. And I think that we need to have, through our policy, which is the Green New Deal, a comprehensive policy of alternative energy, wind, solar, geothermal, small hydro, and we can accomplish what we set out to do, because we need to avoid the politics of fear and embrace the politics of real change.
Okay. Mr. Decker.
Government always has a role in oversight, but it also has a role in not being overburdensome. You can't have an agency like the EPA that's trying to shut down industries such as coal, as Matt alluded to earlier. Look at the way on fracking. There have been 3 Supreme Court cases in the state of Texas where the EPA has gone after a range of resources, all been overturned or thrown out, that fracking hasn't been dangerous. So there has to be some kind of balance between the two, but you can't have one extreme or the other. You can't have one agency try to throw one industry out.
Mr. Corey.
As Mr. Decker alluded to, the EPA, unelected officials, shutting businesses down. I just want to ask Congressman Larson, what is a good middle-class job? Is those coal-fired, clean coal burning plants down in West Virginia, Ohio, and Pennsylvania, is that a good middle-class job that needs to be closed down? None of those jobs be closed down. Communities and small businesses surrounding those jobs will be closed down. Look, we're all for renewable energies, but why should it be at the taxpayers' expense, and why should it be at the corporation's expense in communities and people and jobs? We can come up with renewable energies. We can lease lands and take the royalties off those lands to pay for renewable energies. Look at Solyndra, $500 million of taxpayers' money wasted.
Or what we could be doing is taking the money that, I'm sorry.
No, that's right, you're right.
Or what we could be doing is taking the money that we use to subsidize big oil, that they even say in testimony that they don't want, and use it to keep going forward with the president's agenda for a green economy, for green energy, to make those kind of investments in all of the above. And yes, we need a pipeline, but we need a pipeline that is environmentally secured. We also need to have a natural gas policy, but we have to make sure that fracking and the potential problems that it presents are also there to benefit health. That's why we have regulations, as my good friend pointed out. As my grandfather Nolan would say, trust everyone, but cut the cards. And what happens when you look the other way is what we saw happen in 2008 with the financial collapse because of credit defaults and credit default swaps and everything else that went on Wall Street without regulation. Yes, we need a return to Glass-Steagall, a modern-day Glass-Steagall, But again, we've seen this from Republicans who have come forward and testified. I've worked hand in glove with Gene Guilford, who's talked about what's happened here with regard to speculation on Wall Street and what's happened to people who hijack and raise the prices arbitrarily on the consumer. That's when you need to trust everyone but cut the cards and have the kind of oversight and review that was given to us in Glass-Steagall. And then I hope with the passage of Dodd-Frank and ultimately when it gets through the suits, happens.
Another example of partisanship already. The problem with Dodd-Frank was passed. There are 221 regulations. Only 37% were completed on time. Banks can't lend. They can't hire. They don't know what to do because they pass a bill that hasn't even been finished, that hasn't been, it's been enacted, but they're still finishing the rules. They don't know how to lend. They don't know what to respond. We have to pass bills that make common sense, that people can work with and understand.
There's a difference between partisanship and leadership, and seeing a problem and directing your focus at that problem specifically to deal with the issue. We can't account for all the suits that are taking place in court that are seeking to block this while over-the-counter trades in trillions of dollars continue to take place unregulated. Trillions of dollars lost to our economy, all at the expense of the American taxpayer and the American consumer.
Mr. Corey?
It's amazing, Dodd-Frank. Dodd-Frank hurt little banks that help out small businesses like myself and small communities for people to get money. It's amazing that government, once again, Congressman wants to blame private sector businesses for government failures. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are still in business and still giving out loans. That's amazing.
We have about 10 minutes left. 10 minutes left of debate time that we know is on our schedule. So I'd like to go to a different topic. One of the things that the Congress has to deal with is foreign affairs. So let's try a question on foreign affairs. How should we treat China? How do we compete with China and its fiscal policies and the effects that those policies have on trade? And that goes to Mr. Decker.
Excellent. China is a delicate balancing act because we need them to buy our goods. We need them to buy our bonds. We are so far in debt, we are indebted to them that we have to have them continually purchase our treasury bills, our treasury bonds to finance our spending. The reckless spending in our government, it puts us at an enormous risk. They also are a wonderful benefit to us because they do provide a place where we can have exports where things are purchased. So we need them as a trading partner. But the bigger concern right now is really the piracy going on. We have to protect our patents, our intellectual property. We have to monitor them very, very closely because time and time again, we are seeing the problems with Chinese taking our patents and remanufacturing those same pieces. So it's going to take a very watchful eye. It's going to take a very smart balance. We need them financially. We need them also for our exports, but we also have to be very careful with them.
Mr. Corey.
Well, China is currency manipulation. They bring down the yen, so it's hard for us to export. But import isn't a bad thing either. Ask the longshoremen, the teamsters that haul those goods. But we need to find a delicate balance where we can have fair trade with them. And that's going to take leadership in Washington also.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Let me say my name. Mr. Larson.
I'm proud of the job that this president has done in standing up to China and the problems that we face with respect to currency and the problems that we face with intellectual property. I agree with what both John and Matt have said, especially in the area of intellectual property and also with respect to currency manipulation. But at the end, this is a race with China that we know that what we have to do in this country is make sure that we're making the investments in education for our own children. I've been there. I've seen their investments directly in their infrastructure and directly in their education program. They understand firsthand what's the race to the top. And if the United States is to retain its preeminent position economically, socially, culturally, and educationally, that's going to take investments in our own people and investments in our infrastructure, putting America back to work with American jobs, with American ingenuity, and with American creativity. We do that through a direct investment in research and development and putting money into our colleges, universities, and our community college system and our training systems so that we'll have the jobs available. I just came from an 8th grade today in Southington where we talked, and on their minds and concerns already in 8th grade is what their future is going to look like. It's going to be a bright one. We can compete with anybody in the world. We just have to be willing to make the investments in our own country.
Mr. Derosa.
I think that trade policy is, for many of us, a problem of the race to the bottom. And I think that we need to adjust that. We have real problems in the Green Party with our trade policies. We need to revamp them so that they're much more geared to human needs and not to corporate needs.
Mr. Decker?
I would like to say infrastructure is important, but securing $450 billion from a federal appropriations bill to build a busway, spending $560 million for a 9-mile project going from New Britain to Hartford, is not the type of infrastructure we need. It's more waste that we don't need in Washington.
Okay. Let's take one more question. I'm going to add 2 minutes to everybody's time. That's my prerogative. Okay. There has been very little said over the course of the campaign, not just in Connecticut but nationally, about people in poverty. What is your position on addressing poverty? And this goes to Mr. Corey first.
I don't believe we need more government investment. I think we need private sector investment. Pratt & Whitney does a wonderful job at educating their workforce, but we also need those people to go in and set up cooperatives to fund education for those people who are in poverty. Jobs is the thing to get people out of poverty, not government. Government can come in and help them out, give them a helping hand up, but they don't need more entitlements. They need incentive. They need opportunity to go to work. And I believe government in a small role with private sector can make that happen.
Mr. Larson.
Government operates best when it's a collective enterprise. And when you have both the private sector, the academic sector, and the labor force all pulling together with government, that's when you come up with the best results. But there's no question about the kind of poverty that exists amongst us, and there's no question about what the educational deficiencies are as they relate to socioeconomic beginnings. And so it's important that government weigh in these areas to assist communities that are most in need and to assist the poorest amongst us. That's what our major programs do. Our programs of Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and yes, Obamacare are designed to create the kind of social justice that will provide for people when the bottom falls out. It's great to be a rugged individualist. It's great to celebrate individualism in this country, and we all do. But it's also important to understand that we all come together as a community and that we're all in this together. And I want everybody to know in this district, with respect to that, I've got your back.
Mr. Derosa.
I don't know how you're going to eliminate poverty if you're spending over $1 trillion on warfare all over the world. Our plan is to cut back on our defense budget by 50%. People laugh at that, but they don't realize that in 2000, that's what our budget for defense was. We've been in Afghanistan for 11 years. We say in the Green Party, bring our war dollars home now. We say that loud. We say that the future of our country depends on developing jobs, freedom, and justice. And what does that mean? What it means is that we can no longer continue with this broken system that we have. We need to put forward the Green New Deal, just like Franklin Roosevelt, who was not really in favor of the New Deal when it first came in and was reluctant to do it, but saw poverty in the streets. If we don't do something about the 25 or 26 million Americans who are unemployed, and every year they get kicked off the rolls, and then they're not even counted anymore because they're considered to be no longer looking for jobs. We need a massive jobs program the way we had in the 30s. There's no time any longer to wait. We must do this now. and poverty can be solved. We proved this in the 60s and 70s, that we can do something about poverty. So let's get behind the politics of real change.
Okay.
How many more minutes do I have? by the way?
Mr. Decker?
Thank you.
Poverty is it's a great concern, and it's where I think our government is failing us most. It's their actions, their policies, the borrowing the money that they're doing right now. We have $16.2 trillion in debt now. We are printing money we don't have. We are borrowing money we don't have. When you borrow money you don't have, you weaken the U.S. dollar. When you weaken our dollar, the things that we have to buy every single day, our food, our gas, our utility bills, all these important things go up in value, go up in price. The lowest income individuals, those in poverty, can barely get by. They have less and less money to spend on the things they have to buy every day. It's getting harder. Talk to any of the nonprofit organizations in Hartford and how they're barely getting by. All those same things, food, gas, utility bills, are going up. They have less income. They have less money to spend and take care of the ones that need it the most. People get stuck in the system. Education. People should be able to have school choice. Why would we tell an aspiring young kid that can't get an education and fail in school, they must remain in that school? Give them a goal. Give them an opportunity. We have to let that child be successful. Let them grow into a successful story and have a job. Be an inspiration for their neighbors and kids and younger siblings. But they're getting lost in the system. Our government is failing us and spending too much money, making it the hardest thing on poor families, lower class individuals. This class warfare, middle class, stuff like that, they're forgetting the lower income individuals. These are the people that are struggling, trying to get by right now, and they need our help. And our government printing money and making the costs go up on things that they have to buy every day hurts them the most.
Thank you. Thank you. Heard a little bit about budget in some of your answers and budget implications. So let me ask you a question that has budget implications. We know that there are many proposals for reductions. There are proposals for tax increases, tax reductions, for cutting programs. I'm going to ask you about a specific program and its effect on any kind of reduction for the budget reduction. What about base closures in the United States itself and around the world? And this question goes to Mr. Larson first.
Well, we have to shrink the global footprint of our military. There's no question about it. We are overextended. And while I would agree with Mr. Derosa on a number of points that he made, I think we have to continue to invest in our manufacturing and industrial base. But there's no question about the fact that we have to change the perspective of our military, as we've seen our generals repeatedly say that we've got to be more efficient and smarter and more capable and more lethal in terms of what we what we have to deal with in terms of the terrorist threats that this nation will continue to face. By investing in our manufacturing and industrial base, we also have the trade-off of knowing that will spill over to the private sector and some of our commercial sectors as well and help diversify our economy and grow. But the military and its concerns in carrying out a war on two fronts and being able to recognize that we need to both reduce the size of our forces abroad and use that dividend towards investing in our infrastructure and in our people here at home. We're going to see that dividend come through because the president has gotten us out of Iraq and we're unwinding our way through Afghanistan.
Mr. Derosa.
The United States has over 900 bases in 130 countries across the world. Some people say it's even higher because we actually have a lot of secret bases that you're not supposed to know about. Why do we have 900 bases in 130 countries? Are we building a republic or are we building an empire? The question is, why do we need this? They say it's the war on terror. But the war on terror, as Orwell said, the purpose of war is not victory or defeat. The purpose of war is that it be continuous. And it continues and continues. Now, many people watching at home may say, well, this is a radical proposal. I'd recommend you go out to pollingreport.com. Look at every poll that has been taken for the last 6 months from the American people about the war in Afghanistan and the war on terror. And between 60 and 70% of the people say they want out. They want it to stop now. So I am not a political radical. I am right in the center with all of you because you agree with the facts. And at the debate, you saw how Mr. Romney suddenly became a peacenik overnight. It was a conversion, a religious conversion. And the point of what I'm trying to say here is not everything is the way it seems. Because, you know, in fiction, things have to make sense. But in reality, they don't.
Mr. Decker.
We need to be strategic about budget reduction, in particular base closings. We need to look, if there's ever an area we need bipartisanship and probably involvement of the military coming together, is to look at what our military needs. What bases do we need? What strategically do we need to be successful? I grew up in the 1980s under Ronald Reagan. I saw the success of a strong defense. We built a strong army and military to stand up to the Cold War, and we won that war. We can do this again and be more strategic about it. But we can also be strategic by looking at what do we need the most? Where can we cut costs? Where can we eliminate bases that we don't need? But it can't be done forced by one side of Congress or the other. It's going to have to involve generals and the military together, coming together and looking at the military and what services and what protections we want to provide.
Mr. Corey.
Well, I can proudly say that I served under the great Commander-in-Chief Ronald Reagan in the United States Navy. And the United States Navy at that time had 600 vessels out there in the ocean. Now we're below 300. Do we need to close bases? Absolutely. Maybe some in NATO areas. I'm pretty sure that both sides of the aisle can find savings somewhere. Which one of you are going to send your kid, your sons or daughters, into harm's way and say, we need to make budget cuts? I'm sorry we couldn't give you the body armor you needed out there. I'm sorry we couldn't get the Navy ship there in time to save you. That's a thought for everyone. That's the last place we want to cut, is protection. Is there government waste in it? Absolutely. But there's something bigger than that. Our sons and daughters are over there serving right now. We saw what happened in Libya. That's something I don't want to see ever happen. We had troops close, but that wasn't my decision. Hopefully everybody in the government made the right decision there. We'll soon find out. But those are the things nobody wants to see on TV. That could be anybody's sons or daughters. Once again, I was proud to serve in the United States Navy under Ronald Reagan. And God bless all the soldiers that are out there right now. And I never want to cut anything that's going to put our kids in harm's way.
Thank you very much. At this point, for the last question, there are many more I could ask. I'm going to give each of you the opportunity to address something that is important to you that I have not asked. So it may be different topics, but it's going to start with Mr. Derosa.
How much time do I have left? Okay, 30 seconds. Okay. I wanted to address the student loan system. Our students are going into universities coming out with bills of $60,000, $70,000, $80,000, $100,000. They can't pay this back. There was a privatization of the loan system. It is quite scandalous. After 9 months, these students get a letter saying that they must pay up right away. And if they don't, the incentive for these companies is that the federal government pays them off, and then the federal government pursues them into Social Security to get the money. It's the only loan system that defies any consumer protection laws. And I think that we need to overhaul the student loan system, and I think we should forgive many of these loans because they are predatory on their surface. Sound familiar? Predatory. These mortgages were predatory. And the banksters who have run this country into the ground need to look and do some deep contemplation about what they did. And I hope that you will embrace the politics of real change.
Mr. Decker, your topic.
I'm going to go back to our debt. Our debt really is the key concern that is going to affect all of us individually in so many vast areas. Because if we ever lose the ability to pay our bills, if we ever lose the ability where we can't afford the things that people need or have to have, think of our Social Security, Medicare, the seniors that rely upon that right now, our military defense, all the important services our government does with the money. But we paid $454 billion in total net interest last year on our debt. Think what we could do with $454 billion. That's interest leaving our pockets. That's money going overseas. We have to get our debt under control. We can't continue to add $4.5 billion because if we don't address this now, the choices are going to be made for us. It's a lot easier to make a difficult decision when you recognize that decision is necessary, when you know it has to be done, than it forced upon you. We have to learn in our country there's a difference between a want and a need. I tell my kids this all the time. I go to the grocery store or I go to the supermarket or any mall. They say, Dad, I need this, I need this. I was like, no, you don't need it, you want it. You know, there's so many projects out there that are nice and sound good, but we have to be more efficient. We have to be realistic about the situation that our politicians have put us in, the money they have spent, and the hole that we're in. I haven't heard that at all in this campaign, other than myself talking about the debts that we have. Because, again, it's going to be easier if we address this and are honest with ourselves and make the tough decisions that our generation perhaps will be remembered for when we look back upon this time.
Mr. Corey, your topic.
Okay, John is right. Those are tough decisions. I'm going to go a little off topic and talk about the National Defense Act that Congressman signed into law. I think it impedes on our Fourth Amendment rights. Where they signed that in law at New Year's Day, they say they could lock up an American citizen for a potential threat to the United States government, infringing on our rights of trial, lawyer. That's something that was a little upsetting. And when he talks about war on government, well, when you start infringing on the rights of the people of the United States, there should be a war on the government, and people should speak out about it.
Thank you. Mr. Larson.
Thank you. Let me first agree with Mr. Derosa on a number of the things that he underscored in terms of student loans, and that gets to the financial security that this nation faces. And that security evolves directly around the principal programs of this nation: Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, where drastic cuts are being proposed by the Republican Party, and of course, Obamacare, as it's derisively called by the other side. These fundamentally protect the retirement and security of our people. It is on the ballot with respect to very stark differences between privatization and vouchering and protecting people not only in their old age, but making sure that people, whether you're 62 or 52, are going to have a guarantee. People in this country know the difference between a guarantee and a voucher.
Thank you very much, and that will bring us to the close of the debate. I thank you all for your input and your extended answers. And at this time, we are having the timers reset to 2 minutes. You each have a 2-minute closing, and the order was determined by lottery. Mr. Decker, you are first, Mr. Corey second, Mr. Derosa third, and Mr. Larson is fourth. So, beginning with you, Mr. Decker.
Excellent. Thank all of you for being here. You know, it's been an honor to run for U.S. Congress and really a privilege to try to serve you as your U.S. representative. We have a unique opportunity to send a message across the state and really across the nation that we're not going to tolerate the policies of our failed politicians, the politicians that put us in the position and the decisions that we have to make today. Both Democrats and Republicans have failed us. We have to end that. I entered this race out of my frustration because of the policies of Washington, the debts, the deficits, the unnecessary and burdensome regulations, the partisan. I mean, again, we talked about that all the time, but we saw it up here again, even when one said we weren't going to do it. There's so much vitriol between the sides. It has to end. Washington is broken in many ways, but we can fix it. We have to remember that we elect representatives to represent us. It's not the other way around. I believe that we can do this. If you feel like you don't have a voice, that you want someone to represent you, then I would encourage you to vote for me. Vote for someone that's been active and successful in the community, that has worked on numerous boards and organizations and come together to achieve a goal, be successful in solving a problem. That's what we need. We don't need the partisanship anymore. We don't need the division, and we don't need this country divided. The stakes are too big. We have to come together as a country and as individuals. What I would tell you is, most people turn away from Washington because they're so fed up and they're frustrated. You know, that's why Congress has a 10% approval. We can do better than that if we elect representatives that come together to do this. You know, my kids, my wife and I are married 16 years. We have 3 wonderful kids, 10, 7, and 5. I don't want to go down to Washington to be a career politician. I want to go down there and do my job. I want to vote for what's best for this country and come back to my family as quickly as possible. That's what this country was founded on, a citizens' Congress, when you would go down and represent your country, solve the problems, you represent your country, and come back to your society. We can do this if we come together. So I want to thank all of you for being here. I appreciate your consideration, and thank you for your vote.
Thank you. Mr. Corey.
Thank you. I want to thank all the candidates, and I want to thank the League of Women Voters and the people that are participating. I got into this race because I'm frustrated. I look at young kids that work their way through McKinnon's Irish Pub as a stepping stone through college to go on with their careers, and it's wonderful that a lot of them have. But the problem is I still have those college kids still working there after 4 or 5 years after graduating college, and it's a sad fact. I have a small company, and I have a lot of minorities working for me in Hartford, and kids just want to work, and there's just not the opportunity anymore. And I look in the city of Hartford, and I look at the vacancy rate. It's heartbreaking. And I got fed up, and I said, maybe I can do something. Maybe an independent guy could go down to Washington and make some noise. And so that's why I got in the race. And I just hope that gridlock could stop in Washington. No matter what happens in this race, I just hope people open their eyes and say, why is government preventing job creation by over-regulating? I just see the demise of this state. It's a great state. We used to have a lot of manufacturing here, and it's been here for over 22 years working, and it's just, there's not the opportunity is not out there anymore. And the national debt is something we need to look at, and we need to make sacrifices. I know a lot of people are talking about Social Security and Medicare. Of course, those are promises that lawmakers had made to people. People paid into it. But here's a chance to tell a younger generation that you have an option. Why wouldn't you give them that option? If that program was so sound and everybody was so secure with it, why wouldn't you give a younger kid an option to, hey, maybe I can do better on my own. Maybe I can do better in the private sector. We know those are guaranteed. Anyway, I want to thank everybody, and God bless America.
Thank you. Mr. Larson. I'm sorry, Mr. Derosa.
I want to thank everyone for having me here today, and I want to thank the people at home as well for participating in this event. Again, my name's Mike Derosa. I'm the Green Party candidate for Congress in the 1st Congressional District, and I've been talking to you today about our Green New Deal. If you want to actually see the Green New Deal, you can go out to my website, MikeDerosa.org. And also, I would recommend you vote for our candidates for president, Jill Stein and Sherry Hunkala. You can write them in. It'd be nice to vote for 2 women for a change. Also, the Green Party believes that another world is possible. There are those who are going to tell you that you must vote for the lesser of the 2 evils. I'm going to tell you here today that it is my belief and experience that if you keep voting for the lesser of the 2 evils, you're going to end up with the evil of the 2 lessers. And I think that I would suggest that you need to leave something behind. You need to send a message to the 2 most popular parties in the United States that you don't want endless wars, that you want a Congress that is going to be a watchdog of democracy, not the lapdog of the executive branch or giant corporations. We need to protect and defend our Constitution and our Bill of Rights from those who would use the politics of fear to blur our political vision. We need to embrace the politics of real change and reject the politics of fear and vote for a real candidate for Congress. That's myself. And I'm asking for your vote because I believe that you must leave something behind. We can build a world where people work together to build a world worth living in. We can build this world and make it a better place to live, love, and work in. If that's the kind of world that you want, then vote clean and vote green.
Thank you. Mr. Larson.
Thank you, Carol, and thank the League. And also thank the candidates that are here. I truly do admire them for their running for public office. Anyone who's willing to throw their hat in the ring deserves credit in this day and age. I also thank them for something that I think in this campaign has been absent, and that's the negativity associated with so many campaigns across this nation on both sides. I'm the lead proponent of FINA, which is Fair Elections Now, and that's something I wish we had the opportunity to discuss further, but it's something that we have to get out the corrosive element of money in politics. But I remain an optimist. I remain an optimist because of the kids that I visited here today and because of a resurgence of manufacturing here in this country. My dad used to say when he went to work, we'd ask him, "Dad, why do you work so hard?" He said, "Well, son, I got to keep the eagle flying." The eagle flying was more than the symbol of just Pratt & Whitney's success, but symbolic of manufacturing all across this country. And the investment, again, in our people, of American know-how in innovation. Investing in our people, not only our manufacturing, but our innovation is what it's about. The most important thing, and I think everybody here agrees with this, that we can provide is the simple dignity that comes from a job. And then the ability to look across the table at your spouse and know that your family is secure. Government has got a role in that is principally to make sure that we augment, assist, and help, but also to make sure that we've got their back. And when it comes to the programs of this nation, like Social Security, Medicare, and yes, Obamacare, people have got to understand that we have their back, that they can't fall through poverty, that they can't, because of a health care issue, lose their houses. That's what government can do most effectively. And people who work hard and play by the rules and have paid into a program deserve the guarantee and the government standing behind them. I thank you for the opportunity to serve the 1st Congressional District. I hope I've earned your support for another term.
Again, I thank all of you. And And now it is time for the voters to take what they've heard here today and every other resource they can find and go out to the polls and vote on November 6th. We hope all of you will do that. And if you need any information, you can go to several resources to find out about all of the candidates. The League of Women Voters, LWVCT.org. You can also go to LWVGH.org. That's our website to get a connection. And nationally, you can go to vote411.org, and you can find out about candidates all across the country and also where you vote. They will be able to help you to find out where you vote. So thank you again, and good evening.
Thank you.